And we are live. So, welcome to another Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I am the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and Running Wild RIZE presses. And we're here with you on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And we're here to answer any old questions you may have. So just go ahead and pop your question into the comments section, and I'll repeat your question. And as my amazing editors come on board, they will take turns answering it, as will I. And we'll answer whatever you want. So go ahead and toss that question into the comment section. It can be about Running Wild, RIZE, myself, editing, writing. It could be about my favorite ice cream. It just depends on what you want to share with us, and we would be more than happy to respond. So with that, I'm actually, Margaret's here. Good evening. Good evening, Margaret. It is fantastic to see you. As always, absolutely wonderful to see you. Hopefully you're having a good evening. And and by the way, if you are watching this and it is not Thursday between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time, then it's not a big deal. You can go ahead and put your questions into the comments section because we actually do check during the course of the week. Rod says, "Hey, Lisa." Hey, Rod. As always, fabulous to see you. Hopefully you are having a phenomenal week. I know, at least for me, I was like, woohoo, it's Thursday. And always happy to come upon the weekend. So, and I have some fun stuff planned for this weekend. It's right before the Halloween, well, to me, holiday. And I am going to be going to a concert at the Hollywood Bowl. I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm going out to dinner with some friends, which will also be absolutely amazing. So yeah, all good. And I'm here with Peter. Hey, Peter.
Hey, how you doing, Lisa?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. Good. A little tired. Looking forward to the end of the week.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm working with 3 different authors right now, so exciting stuff.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Margaret says Cody and I have completed round 1 of developmental edits. Woohoo!
Cool.
Yeah, well done. Very, very cool. I'm excited to see it. So that'll be a good time. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. What are you working on, Peter?
Still working on Madam President.
Okay.
So that's coming along. I just sent one of my authors their manuscript back, which is 4th time. So finishing up next time. Jump back into manuscript that I was working on before, which is kind of interesting and kind of disappointing at the same time, because I spent hours and hours on this manuscript, and it took me like a month and a half to get through 100 pages.
Wow.
And just notes and ideas and thoughts and questions and all that. And it looks like the author just completely ignored 98% of what I wrote. So it's kind of like, so now I have to go through the manuscript and see, what changes he accepted versus what ones he didn't. And that's going to create even more work. It's like, what is he going to listen to going forward? What am I not going to be wasting my time on, kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a little frustrating.
No, I feel that.
I'm sure you do. Sure you do more than I do.
Well, I mean, hopefully, I mean, maybe you can get together with him and just talk through like what areas he accepted and what ones he didn't, and why. Or
that's a thought. I mean, he's 6 or 8 hours ahead of us time zone wise, so it'd be an interesting conversation that way. Either be too early for me, or too late for him, kind of thing. So
got it.
I need to open a dialogue of some sort to figure out what my next steps are, because I don't want to do all this work if you're not going to listen to it. Yep. But if he is going to listen to it going forward, I could create a good enough argument, so who knows? I'll have an answer by next week for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good, I think.
Yeah. So
at least you feel like you can have the conversation. Like that's critical. So
exactly. And I've only had one author where I couldn't have that conversation with, and that just didn't work out at all. So.
Oh my.
I mean, I'm not trying to be cocky or arrogant, but I know what I'm talking about. I've done this before. I've been doing this. I don't do things just to say things. Hey, why don't we change this to from Margaret to Floyd? No. Just. So just so you know, I can only hang out for a couple minutes. I just want to jump on, give you status report, see what's going on, see how you're doing. Where's Ben?
I don't know, right? Isn't this shocking?
He's always here.
Yeah, he's oh, you know what? No, he has an intensive class that he has to teach this week.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think for like the next maybe 6 weeks or something like that.
So, really? Okay.
Yeah. But it's all good. It's all good. So, but no, I feel you on the, hey, I just gave you, that's why honestly, it's part of the reason why I started to say, like, if I realized I was making a lot of recommendations or asking a lot of questions, I started to set up time with the author before I really dove into it and just said, okay, what's the purpose of this? Like, what's the goal of this story and how can I make it successful? Right.
Right.
And that's when I usually found out, like, oh, they went all over and, so then together we figure out, like, okay, what's this really about and how do we make it, again, how do we make it successful? So, yeah.
Right. I don't think my author is consciously ignoring my suggestions. I just think he doesn't know what to deal with. I mean, and he could be going, this is not what I expect. This is not how I want my novel to be. So he's listening, it's like just kind of blowing it off, which is, not very good because I don't know what's going on in his mind,
Right.
So I prefer email, but a conversation, I think in this instance is required.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it. It sounds like it. So yeah.
It's an interesting story. It's still good. It's still going to be really interesting when it comes out. I mean, the plot is fantastic.
Oh,
and I'm
good.
Curious what the final hook's going to be, because I know it's going to be something good.
Oh, well, that's what he's known for. So something good, man. Something good.
So what's going on? How's your roof?
Oh, you want to see?
Sure.
Let's see. I still don't. Well, I can't say I still don't have one. That's not fair. Let's see. So if you look up.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's a big old hole with the lathing.
Yeah. So luckily they covered it with yeah. And what do you call it? To make it insulated. Insulation. Duh.
Oh.
This is one of those where it's like, okay, Lisa, just stop. And they haven't yet actually started repairing like the final part of it. So I'm really looking forward to that. So it'll be nice. Yeah.
So interesting. You have a plaster ceiling. How old is your house?
1904.
That'll do it.
Yep.
Makes finding a stud very difficult, as I know for first-hand effect.
Yeah. So, and it's considered a historic home, so there's only certain things you can do to the exterior.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. The interior, they don't really care, I guess, but the exterior, yes. So
kind of like an HOA, huh?
Yes.
Those cursed things.
Those cursed things. How long have you been in your home?
This one, about it's going on 5 years now. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
5 years. Before this, we were in Southwest Florida for about 8 years, and then Chicago for a long time.
Oh, okay.
So that house was built in 1879.
Wow. There you go.
Cool. It was hard as a rock. I did some major renovations in that place, and they were difficult as all get out.
Oh, wow. Nice.
The beams are solid 4 inches wide. So back when they didn't shave any inches off.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So, Yeah. I just keep on going. And
Cool.
they keep going. So Margaret Buchanan says, when do you know to let go of the MS? I'll let Peter answer that first. Like, so when do you finally say the manuscript's done?
When I'm writing or when I'm editing?
Editing.
When I've either
Well, how about both?
okay. Editing is when I've gone through it at least 3 times. I know the author's voice. I know what he's trying to accomplish or she's trying to accomplish, and the questions that I've had have been answered to such a degree that asking more questions isn't going to lead anywhere. It's not going to change anything. And I think by that point, we've realized the author's point in telling the story and getting it as smooth and as polished as possible. That's when it's like, okay, this is going to be effective. This is going to be good. People want to read this. Now we move on. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's just kind of a mental thing. In terms of writing, writing, you just got to come to a point where it's like, there's nothing more I can do for this at this point. I've gone through it 5, 10, 15, hell, 40 times with some of the novels I've written. But it comes, I gotta let go. I gotta let somebody else look at it to give me some perspective to see what they think of my writing, if they've got any suggestions, or if everything's still clear to them. Because one of the traps I see authors falling into a lot is they picture the scene in their head, but they don't put it on the page. Yeah. So you're just dealing with a lot of dialogue, and I'm guilty of that as well. So just comes a time where it's like I'm done working on it. I need to get some feedback, some input.
Got it. Yeah, I am actually similarly. I read it. I try to read it like a reader. I have the mind of a writer, and the mind of an editor. So it enables me to like go back and say, hey, I think this is what we're trying to do here. Let's try this instead, or whatever, right? And it's when I go through the whole manuscript without like any major delays, that's when I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is banging. This is great.
You're far kinder on yourself than I am.
I mean, I'm not always that way, but yeah, I'd say.
It sounds good, so let's stick with it.
Exactly. Yeah, that sounds good. So what? But yeah, I mean, Margaret, you're absolutely right. It's hard to kind of figure when you're going to let go, right? Because between or among, you've got the editing, you have the proofreading, you have the structure, you have the overall narrative itself, and which are all very different things. And I mean, they don't get me wrong, they all interplay, obviously, right? They wouldn't not be able to. Well, I would hope not. But it's especially when you're in the throes of an editing process where you and your editor are really kind of gelling, right? And you're really vibing well. A lot of times it can be difficult. We have one author who is working with one of our incredible editors, and they've been on it for what, like a year and a half now, something like that. Something, yeah. And every time the editor goes back, he says, you don't have to, like, this isn't a major change, right? This is like a word. And the author is like, no, it can be better, right? And it's like, right. So, does that always happen? No, obviously not. But it's something to keep in mind. And a lot of editors might do that as well. Although most editors I know who do that, they do it to their own stuff. It's not that they don't keep, but there comes a point where it's like, I've taken this, I've partnered with this author, and I've taken this as far as I can take it. So I think we're good now, right. So yeah. And I know I've hit that point. Honestly, I do what I described earlier, right? If I'm reading something where I know it has a lot of potential, but it needs some streamlining, to put it politely. I'll get on a call with the author and just say, what's your objective with this story? Because I want to support that, right? And whatever my feedback is. And then we kind of talk through it. And I mean, I've had authors come back with, I mean, what I mean, I know it's not, but what feels like complete reinventions to the narrative, because they realized, oh, this is what this is my goal, right? Like saying it out loud makes it real,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they go back and do a massive revision that's just stunning. So I've had that happen a couple times. Now, mind you, it doesn't mean I wasn't like, all right, well, let's talk about what's the real goal of this. Like, what's our real objective? How do we want to make this, right? How do you want to be, especially if it's a memoir? Like,
right.
How do you want the world to perceive you? Because if they perceive you as clever, that doesn't mean they're enjoying your narrative necessarily, right? Like, what are you really trying to accomplish? And then as they talk through it, it's like, oh wait, yeah, you know what, no, I want this instead. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So and that's it was funny. I forget who I was meeting with earlier this week, and I was talking about like everything that goes in around a story, like a full-length work, because people forget, like, this is a lot of work, right? Doing the back jacket copy, doing your bio, doing this type of thing, right? Being interviewed different places, going to conferences, teaching at different workshops, all that kind of stuff. That is all a whole lot of work. And unless you are mentally prepared for it, it can be overwhelming, So and a lot of people are, they end up being overwhelmed by it. So I just realized we have a ton of texts, and so I should actually read them. Rod says, I have always heard that the climax of a story should come at the end of Act 2, beginning of Act 3 at the latest. Do you believe it floats to have the climax scene on last page? I would suggest moving it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, my first thought goes to lecture Kurt Vonnegut gave. I was actually fortunate enough to see him at a campus in Chicago before he passed, obviously.
Wow. Sorry.
They show the 5 different story arcs that are in every story. Every story fits one of these arcs. And he's talking about how one of them is, the story goes up, tension, drops down, goes up again. And like he's saying, at the end of Act 2, that's when you've got your penultimate crisis. And you go back down and you build up again to the climax at the end of Act 3. Kind of like it's a precursor. I mean, it can be there, but you want to end with something that's even more exciting. That's even more enriching for the story, for the author, for the writer. That's just my 2 cents. That's how I write.
And I know, you have to keep. There has to be additional activities. There has to be more action going on within the narrative. And when I say action, that doesn't mean it has to be like, gun chasing and all that kind of stuff. It just means that there's tension, right? So there has to be some kind of tension going on, at least through, I'd say, 2/3 of the story, because it's more so that you lose the reader if you don't have that tension, if you don't have that conflict of some sort, right? And conflict can be in a romance, conflict can be in hard fiction, conflict can be in any form of story. It's more so just some type of exchange that continuously occurs that is causing some kind of strife or some type of tension within the story itself. So classically, what you just described, Rod, is actually the 3-act play. So, which is not wrong. Yeah, it's right. But to Peter's point, it's not the only structure that exists, if that makes sense. So
as far as the tension that you were talking about, I mean, the tension can be gun chasing, car chases. It can also be quiet as all get out. Like a couple is having a picnic and Bob wants to go to the ball game and Sally wants to go to the opera. There's tension going on there. It's rife with it, just depending on how you explore it and how they deal with each other over their, perceived wants. As long as there's want in the story, there's going to be tension.
100%.
One character wants one thing, another character wants another thing. So the story is, how do they get what they want? They got to fight like hell for it. But again, it can be quiet, it can be loud.
Yep, 100%. I completely agree. Yeah, and it's funny because all you have to do is think about you being all of us, right? Our own lives and what causes tension in our own lives. And it doesn't, to your point, it doesn't have to be like I'm hitting someone upside the head with a bat, right? It can simply be, and I wouldn't, but
not very often it can't be, but
but it's something where the reader feels it, the reader senses it, right? And another character within the narrative. I mean, to your point, it could be a haunted house and no one else is in the house other than the singular character, right? The primary character. It's just, it depends on how it's positioned and it's presented to the reader, him or herself. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, one thing is a lot of people don't realize that the tension that's in their lives inherently. I mean, having to get someplace up by a certain time, going to a job and having to do certain things you really don't enjoy and try to resist as much as possible. That's tension. That's wanting something different than what you have to do. So it's just simply conveying that or merging that over to the story, to fiction or nonfiction, but just recognize the tension that's in your life and how quiet it could be or how loud it could be,
Yeah, absolutely. Caroline says, good late afternoon. Evening, Peter, Lisa. Yikes. Ruth. When are they saying 1904? Been there. Had one at Swiss Avenue, Dallas, Texas. Historic district also. Wonderful restoring. When we first bought our house, and I still adore our house, and we're in it's funny, when people come to this part of Los Angeles, they don't realize it exists. So it's a very suburban feeling area, but it's in the heart of Los Angeles, of downtown LA. So it's because we have Mount St. Mary's and University of Southern California are like walking distance from here. Oh, cool. So yeah, so we get all their security and all that. So believe me, I'm not complaining. So let's see. Caroline says, isn't the main storyline the most important, not just changing a wood here or there? So I honestly think it's so I believe in structure. That sounded horrible, but and what I mean by that is I like complex narratives personally, like when I'm reading a book. And because I like complex narratives, it means that the writer has to structure out key plot points before he or she sits down to actually start writing it. So you're right, Caroline. It's not just changing a wood here or there, but it's being able to visualize the entire narrative itself and acknowledging that it may change as you're actually developing it. So I don't know, Peter, what do you think?
I think the main storyline is very important. It could be, the cool thing is it could be the tracks on which the whole story rides, or it could be the undertone of the story as it's being told. Like the book that came to mind was Lord of the Flies. So you've got the main character who's got to have some sort of civilization. So he's setting up everything, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this. And then you've got the rebels who are forming their own gang. They've got their wants, they got their storyline, and you got Piggy who's doing what he can. So you get different storylines going on here, but the main storyline is to get rescued, get off this island, and how they're each dealing with it. So it's like we got a multitude of storylines, with the main storyline still being the most important one, but it's the quietest line in the book.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Don't remember any other character's voice name but Piggy.
Rod says, I once knew a writer who was on her 17th rewrite. Woo! One could rewrite forever. I feel there's a point when one must call a job done. I've never had to do more than 5 passes. Does this make sense?
Damn, only 5. Wow, I wish I could do only 5.
Oh my God, I love you so much. Go ahead, do it.
My method is I'll write a draft and I'll like it, but I want to change a couple things, so I'll resave it as a next draft, like X+1 or whatever like that, because in case I want to go back and find anything in the previous manuscript that I want to include in this one. You know, if I'm doing an editing, I never go back to the previous manuscript ever. That hasn't happened once, but that's how I keep building. I mean, some stories I've written, hell, I said 47 drafts earlier. That's what I meant. I mean, I go through drafts. I want to make sure it is what I want to say, how I want it to come across.
See, I go back and I know the structure that I want, and I research the hell out of it. And I already have, at this point, I already have the characters in my head, right? Mm-hmm. So it's mapping them out. And just making sure that everything works, if that, is effective, is a better way of saying it. Honestly, Rod, I couldn't tell you how many passes I make, because what I do is I write a draft. The next day I go back and I rewrite that draft. And then I start on the next one, right? And then I go back and I rewrite. The third day, I might go back to the first day, but I'll definitely go back through the second day and go through that draft, because I'm looking for, like, is there any place I goofed? Are there any opportunities to make the story more interesting? Is there something that's out of character for the main characters, which by now, people they know, so I'm looking through for all that kind of thing, and then I'll move forward, and then I go back over the whole thing again, because going over chapter by chapter or section by section, it's not telling me the umbrella story. It's just telling me that segment. So yeah, I couldn't tell you how many passes I make.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is not healthy nor. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's encouraged. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Please don't shoot me. Okay. So, Rod says, did my last 2 questions show up, or YouTube acting up again? I don't know. If your question was, does that make sense? Yes, we saw it. If it's anything else, no, we did not. Rod says, my issue I'm facing is 2004, the wrap up, closing loose ends. Then we go to 2003, the climax. Seems these should be flipped. I would think so, unless you're going back to the future. And maybe you are. I don't know. Could be. I mean, Michael Keaton's still alive, or Michael J. Fox. Michael J. Fox is still alive.
They're both still alive.
They're both still alive. Why not? Caroline says, how about a book you've been working on for 40 years? Woo! Yes, almost there. Laughing. 40 years and almost 400 pages. All right, I'm we both have the same look on our face, like, good God, woman.
That's determination, and stick with it. That's for sure.
Oh, gotcha.
My question is, what's holding you back? What is preventing you from moving on from this book? What is sticking with the plot, the characters, the storyline? I mean, what is holding you back?
Well, she has.
I mean, 40 years, and how often are you looking at it? I mean, are you doing this, 1 page a month kind of thing, or kind of a couple pages a night, or do this every day? Just, how much time and attention that you give to it.
Well, Caroline has, we've published 1 or 2 things of hers. So I know she's done other stuff. So this isn't continuous. Unless she turns around and says, yes, it is, Lisa. But yeah, 40 years is a long. When did you start? When you were 5? Like, good Lord, women. That's a lot.
A lot.
Margaret says, I usually do a draft. Wait a couple weeks, months, then take a look at it. That's actually not a bad idea.
That's actually recommended by a lot of writing teachers, is to write your draft, put it away for 2 to 3 weeks, and then look at it with fresh eyes, because you're going to see things that you completely missed the first time through. So yeah, definitely give it some time in a drawer, 3 weeks, a month, or whatever, however long it feels comfortable, it feels right to you. But yeah, that's a great way of writing, great way of revising.
And there's actually what's interesting too is once we actually get the story done, you would be surprised. Actually, Peter, you wouldn't be surprised, but other people watching would be surprised at the number of times we have an author get the formatted manuscript, so like the PDF, and they suddenly see all this stuff that just wasn't there before, and they swear it was put there. And I'm like, why would anyone do? No one cares. Not no one cares, but it's not.
You're not breaking any rules.
It's not breaking any rules, and at least as far as I know, this isn't actually, it's not a thing. Like, it's not like,
it's not a science.
No, and it's not running in the streets, It's not, yeah. So I wouldn't freak over this, but sure, okay. But we do take those edits back. Now that said, if someone comes back and says I need to completely rewrite this chapter, that's something different. But if it's there's this error, there's that error, whatever, then we do fix that. So
it's a good way to open communication with the writer as well, saying if you're going to make sizable changes, talk to me first so I know what to expect when I get the manuscript. Because he's rewritten several passages in the book that I'm working on right now, and I'm fighting to get through. But it's like now it's got to find out what I've edited, what I've seen before, and what he's added, and how that adds to the story or takes away from the story. So it's like it's a two-way street.
Yeah,
I need to emphasize that more with my authors. Actually, that's mostly on me.
You're too kind.
Yeah.
Margaret says, I usually do a draft. Oh no, I said that. Okay. Rod, I do 1, first draft, 2, scenes, line edit, 3, betas, 4, copy, 5, proofread. What would you justify 10 more passes for? You're kidding, right?
Have we seen anything Rod's written?
No.
Has he submitted anything? Okay.
No, I don't think so. No. I just love your response. You're like, what? Rod says, oops, add 1.5 developmental.
Yeah, let's add that extra half a step. 5.5. Dude, if that's your method and it works, man, more power to you. That's fantastic.
Right?
Pump out more books, get more stories out there. That's fantastic.
Yep, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, what Donald Moss has a revision book that is like, good Lord, it's not small. So that's what made me laugh, Rod, was if you look at the revision book, there's a lot to it, I mean, you don't have to do it that way. There's no, there's absolutely no reason that you have to do it that way, but I'm just saying, right. It's a well-known successful revision strategy. So
I met Donald a long time ago, back in like early aughts.
Caroline says, it was a book Random House was interested in and wanted me to make it more current in the 80s when they first saw it. I made changes, but the editor and her assistant, were let go when Random House was bought up once again. So I never did anything with it. So now going back to making decisions.
So you haven't been working on it for 40 years solid. And this is got it working, get sent to the editor. They didn't like it. They sent it back for revisions and they were gone. So now you got this huge gap. So you could just bring what you've learned since then back to the story, and enhance it that way.
Yeah, no, totally. Caroline's like, I'm laughing. Oh, goodness. Yeah. I mean, I heard stuff like that before too. And you never know. Like if your gut tells you this doesn't make any sense, then don't do it,
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard plenty of stories about editors or editors getting let go from a publisher, and then the author goes, well, I've got this book. And like, well, that's nice. He's gone or she's gone. So you got to restart all over again.
Yep. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And it, unfortunately, it seems to happen relatively frequently, at least once a year, if not more.
Easy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just never know. Did I ever tell you about when I was being interviewed? I was interviewed at one of the big studios, and I was supposed to be in charge of all the systems, all the business systems.
No, you haven't.
So I was like, I get along incredibly well with the VP I would be reporting to. He's like, okay, yep, you're it. I'll bring you on, literally. And I thought, wow, this is great. I've always wanted to work here, blah, 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 whatever. And so the next day, literally, they have this massive reorg and he disappears.
Oof.
And I was like, oh man, I know what that means.
Back on the street.
Yep. I feel bad for the poor guy because I think he basically spent his career at that location, which I shall not name. Oh, and he was a nice guy too. It's a shame, but no. But that happens all the time, especially in media and entertainment. Probably far more than at like a morgue or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rod says 1.5 was meant to place it between 1 and 2. Well, I actually take the developmental step very seriously. Oh, okay. Caroline says, that's what happens, Lisa. I know. I've since we moved to California, we have been witness to far more than we had intended. Not that I didn't see a lot when I was out in New York, but yeah. Rod says, my chatter here is me trying to learn. You are the experts. I really listen to you guys. This show helps me a lot. Oh, well, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, please don't take any of this as criticism. I'm being sincere when I say that's a great method. If you can knock out a book in five drafts, that's awesome. Yeah. What I've learned is that the more I know, the harder it is to write because I know the rules. And I'm carrying this whole baggage of knowledge with me as I work through the story. And it just sometimes it gets a little bit onerous, a little bit too much. I need to take a break, take a step back. So it's like, if you've got this step down, you got your method down, and more power to you. That's fantastic. A lot of writers don't. A lot of writers don't.
A lot of writers don't. Yeah, some writers take some 5-10 years per story.
Mm-hmm.
Not all, but and honestly, the ones that they finally get to the point that they have their approach nailed down, I mean, man, they're just cranking, which is great. It's great to be in that position. So, of
course, then you can be like one of our authors who puts out a book every year, Mr. Smith.
Well, that's just because he adores working with you. That's all. Caroline says, yeah, more for any more than
Far
anyone
more than anyone
realizes.
realizes.
Yeah. Margaret says, what are your long-term goals, plans for Running Wild Press? Oh, we want to become one of the biggest independent, not just publishers, but media entertainers. So, and we're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
We have the licensing rights for what, like 140 books or stories, something like that, if you include short stories and novellas. So,
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean we're like, get out of here, author. It's nothing like that, because we're all authors as well, right? This is more about making sure that fans have what they want where they are. So, Rod says, I've written 18 stories in 2 years, but 2/3 of them will never see daylight. Oh, okay. Sure. if that's what you say, sir.
I've got stories when I was writing 20 years ago. I just got folders and folders and folders of stuff that will never see the light of day. Not only because part of it is atrocious, but I just didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't going anywhere. So it's just like it just sits there on my hard drive because it didn't. I mean, the idea didn't pan out. And if yours are completed, that's awesome. I mean, just I don't know what I'm saying, but I just know I've got folders and folders and folders of stories and stories and stories.
Yeah. Well, it's better than not.
True. I like to think they've been getting better too. So.
Well, I would imagine so. I don't even know how many stories I've written. I've gotten to the point where either I'm invited or I hear about it and I think it's cool and I pitch it. Like I'm like, hey, what about this?
Mm-hmm.
And then either they're like, oh, heck yeah, or I'm basically told to screw off. So, I mean, you gotta go with it.
Exactly.
Rod says, fun to get to know me, isn't it, Peter? Yes.
Oh, well, you're awesome, Rod. It's cool.
Rod, all of us, man, we're all not quite right. So I'd say you're in good company. We just don't necessarily advertise it as frequently. I don't know. Or maybe we do. Who knows? Wow, it's already 1:15.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, guys, if you're watching, then don't forget, if you have a question for us, just go ahead and pop your question in the comments section. And we'll repeat it and then respond to it. And also know that we will give whoever gives us the most interesting story or question, great story. Anyone who gives us the most interesting question will get their choice of books from our catalog. So go ahead, toss that question into the comments section. Do know that, it doesn't count if you put the question in the comment section after we're done. Just in case someone's watching and you're like, oh, good, I'll just ask it now. No, because we're not, I was going to say, because, we're not checking all the time, but we actually are checking all the time. So, I don't know. Anyway, whatever. But it only counts if it's in live and we ask live. So, Rod says, I'm proud to be crazy. Some of the best artists in history were pretty much crazy. That's true. He says, poor Ben, he has gotten to know me well. Well, Ben actually is off teaching right now. So you're going to have to wait a little while. I think it's 6 weeks that he's teaching.
Okay.
And then he'll be back, Rod. Don't worry. Specifically just to terrorize you, because nothing else is more fun.
We're going to tell him that's a name that he's got to put on his little placard down there. Poor Ben.
I think it's appropriate. He could put it on his picture. It would just say "Poor Ben." Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you reading these days?
What am I? I'm reading novellas.
Yeah.
2 novels, and I have a 3rd novel that I'm going to be working on shortly. And yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading the Weird Tales 100th year anniversary edition because I'm curious like what the other stories are.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Anything that you're not working on editing wise, or just I'm reading a couple of nonfiction books, plus the stories that I'm working on, the fiction. But what happened to time? I mean, geez, I used to have all this time in the world, and I was like, and it's going to be dark at 4:00 then a couple of weeks from now. So
right, yeah. No, I don't know, man. I once upon a time I could knock out a full length in like a week. It was like boom, done. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, there's just so much going on that I mean, it gets done. Don't get me wrong. It's just not. It's not the same kind of turnaround. So, but so what? No, what are you reading? What are you reading?
Mostly just catching up on couple books about change. Couple of catching up on the Poets and Writers magazines. And there's 3 articles, 3 columns in there every 2 months, and I put them off for just months reading them. So it's like I got a stack of them about 4 inches high.
Wow.
To get through those. Yeah. Just time. Again, I got to get back to fiction. I've got this book sitting next to me, and I want to read this again. All the Light We Cannot See. Fantastic book. Fantastic book. So that's been sitting next to me for a while.
Got it.
So, but time.
Yeah, totally. Caroline says, writers, I'm convinced, live a questioning existence to others. Most often seem strange, I'm sure. Okay. Rod says, isn't this life as a writer fun? I absolutely love it. Well, yay.
I think the life of a writer is interesting because you're always in at least two places at once. I mean, you're in reality, but part of you is like, let's take reality. What would this be like if it was a story? Or what story could I make out of the situation? So you're always going to look at life kind of subjectively, analytically kind of things, seeing what you can pull out of it, what you can extrapolate for the stories you've got. So there's always more than one thing going on in your mind when you're paying attention. I think it's fascinating.
No, it is. It's quite interesting, actually. Margaret says, I'm reading My Friend Anne Frank, or Anna Frank, by Hannah Pick Godslayer, who I'm sure I just said her name wrong. Rod says, I'm editing 2 books and reading 2. One of them, I just started, The Institute by Stephen King. Have you read it? Is it good? No. I actually have piles and piles of books next to my bed. And then I have stacks of books that I've read already that I really thoroughly enjoyed, and I want to go back and reread because there's some elements to it that I want to learn. So, yeah.
That's the catch-22 in my opinion, because when I'm editing a book, I'm reading it 3-4 times. And I'm getting so much more out of it, the nuances out of it, the things that I miss and everything like that. And books like this, I mean, I read books that have been published. I read them once and I put them down. It's like I'm missing so much because I don't have the time to go back and read them again. So, yeah. But I want to keep reading because I want to see how other authors are putting their stories together and how they're writing them. And of course, I also want to be entertained. So,
yeah, no, it totally makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I used to live in the clearance section of the Barnes & Noble because certain times a year you could get like Pulitzer Prize winners and National Book winners and So I would like stock up. So, let's see. Rod says, I'm editing 2 books and reading 2. One of them I just start. Oh, I said that. Whatever. Okay, Caroline, do you find you seek answers as your characters seek them, Lisa and Peter?
Trying to come up with an instance.
This will sound weird. I try to keep their background and their experiences in consideration when there's like some kind of major exchange, because what's occurred within their lives directly impacts those significant events. It doesn't mean I'm always successful, but that's what I try to do.
I mean, for me, the characters in my story, I like them to have their own lives. I mean, hell, if I had the time, I'd go back and write backstory on, each one of them, at least 4 or 5 pages, just to have it, something to pull from, so I know how they're going to react to a certain situation. But I mean, at the bottom line, this is just for me. I mean, it's just shades of me, how I would put myself in the situation, how they would react to the situation. Every once in a while, I mean, I get surprised, which is fun when the character does something completely different. Just that he talks. I mean, you hear author say the character just started talking. I just started writing down what they were saying. That's amazing, because you're that much into the story, you see exactly what's going on, but it's all coming from one brain. So,
No, and to me that's a challenge, right? Like if I can directly hear the character and I'm basically transcribing whatever it is that they say, that means that there are others within that same environment that I'm not paying attention to, and that may add another perspective to the narrative, and I may want that, so it depends on what the story is,
right?
And I rarely write from just one point of view, because it's not as much fun to me, but yeah.
I used to write from one point of view, but now it's much more fun to play with. They come at the same story from different perspectives, because you get more out of it. You can tell more detail. You can get more emotion into it, so you know what's going on with the other characters as well as the main character. So
yeah, agreed, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Margaret says, you have to read as much as you write, Stephen King. Rod says, Yahoo! Lisa thinks I'm worth reading twice. Okay. Caroline says, that's the part that's amazing, Peter and Lisa, hearing our characters take over. That is true. It is amazing. And being able to actually see them as if they, have a physical life is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
And like I was saying before, it's like writing 4 or 5 pages of backstory. I've heard stories of writers who do that with every character that they've got. I mean, they've got reams of backstory they can pull from, so that when their character does or says or does something, it's true to their character based on the character that they were invented as. If that makes sense.
No, it does. Caroline says that's your reward, or our reward. Rod says, my characters always run, and I type as fast as I can, try to type. Okay. Sorry. Give me a second.
I got a challenge for you. This is something that I found works for me sometimes.
Okay.
There's typing a story, and then there's writing a story longhand.
Oh,
and
yeah.
When you write a story longhand, you get much more out of the telling of it, because there's so much, your hand moves only so fast. You can type 50 words, 60, 70 words a minute, but when you're writing, it has to go slow. So you get more out of more plot, more interesting ideas, more interesting characters, more vivid descriptions, because your brain has the time to work while you're writing. Now, if I could, that's what I would do with every story, because I know writers who do that. They write longhand first, then they translate to the typewriter or to the computer, and it's just so much richer, so much more robust, because they've taken that time. That's the challenge. Is slow your brain down, Rod. Slow your brain down. See if you can write out longhand. Start with a page, couple pages. See what you come up with. See what happens, and then bring it to the computer.
Well, and like Ben does this, right? He writes longhand when he first gets out of bed, and then he types it all into his computer, and he revises as he's typing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad idea.
No.
It's a great idea.
And his poetry is really good.
Yeah, it really is. Bastard.
Another thing I like doing is when you finish a story, when you're ready to, like we were saying before, when you think a story is done, take your time, print it out, read it out loud. The whole thing, read it out loud, because your ear will hear things that your eyes don't see, that your brain doesn't pick up on. When you hear it, that's when you can make your changes that way. So, I mean, there's a lot of different methods, tricks, as they may say, of going at this to create the best possible work before you send it to an editor.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, and it just depends on what's best for you, right?
Right.
You just need to figure out what gives you that rhythm, so that you complete it successfully, not that you leave it frustrated. So.
Right.
And Caroline, I have stories that I started writing. Well, I wouldn't say 40 years ago, but maybe 20 years ago, or 15 years ago. And I mean, I just put them down because at the time I wasn't able to find a home for them. I found fans for them, but I wasn't able to find a home for them. So, you just gotta either you decide, all right, I'm gonna keep at it, or I'm gonna say screw it. I'm moving on. And I know you have actually moved on, because we've published some of your stuff. Rod says, if Ben the Wizard hears the show, bastard, he will turn Lisa into a frog. Bummer. I like Lisa. That's okay. I don't mind being a frog. A redheaded frog. Who knew, man? Something new every day. I don't know. Well, do you think I don't know about a frog. I mean, maybe he'd turn me into something, but I don't know if he'd turn me into a frog.
Yeah, I'm not going there. You and Rod's frog thing could be your old thing.
All good. Caroline says, I'm a little worried. Maybe to date her into the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Actually, I think that's exactly what it is. Oh, but that's okay.
That's what it is. Let it be what it is. Let it be what it wants to be. Yeah.
Ooh, dated. Man, she just said it flat out. Sorry, Rod, you're called out, man. It's just, it's too bad for you. Sorry. Exposed. Peter is a realist. Realize that before now? Come on, man. Get with it. Now that's a very 70s? No, 60s? 60s reference.
60s, yeah.
60s, yeah. But and it keeps coming back, which is interesting. It's like, here, combat boots. I'm like, okay, I don't know why these are hot again, but sure, whatever.
And we're at the age where we go, those were hot 30 years ago, and the people wearing them, I was like, no, they weren't. Shut the fuck up. Okay.
Oh, well. All right. Well, it looks like we are out of time. It's not much different than what's happening now, Caroline says. That is very true. It's exactly what's happening now. But it looks like we are just about out of time. So with that, I want to thank Peter for sticking around. I know you had other stuff to do. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, this was fun.
And thanks, Caroline, Rod, Margaret. You guys, as always, are just phenomenal, and we absolutely adore having you with us. So I think with that, I will end our stream. And thanks, everybody. And don't forget, just go ahead and pop your questions into the comment section, and we'll go back and check for it during the week. Cool? Cool. Awesome. All right.